Who's really getting the most out of a big room, 5.1.2 home theater system, and who should just keep the old TV speakers? If you're wondering whether the Klipsch Ebony 5.1.2 is the right fit for a family movie night, a gaming marathon, or even a casual binge-watch session, let's break it down. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I've spent the last couple of weeks listening to it in a 3,000 square foot house, swapping cables, and watching the same titles on two different source devices, so I can tell you where the value actually lives and where you might be paying for features you'll never use. First off, the biggest source of hesitation for most buyers is the sheer scale of the system. A full-stack 5.1.2 with two upward-firing Dolby Atmos speakers is a commitment both physically and financially. If your room is under 250 square feet, or you mostly watch content on a laptop in a bedroom, you're probably better off with a smaller 2.1 or soundbar setup. In those tighter spaces, the extra height channel can actually feel overwhelming, and the subwoofer may dominate the room's low-frequency response, making dialogue a little muddy. That's why the first question to ask yourself is, how big is my listening area, and how often will I be using it for cinematic or gaming experiences versus background music? The Ebony series isn't just a reskin of older Klipsch models. The company has upgraded the drivers across the board. The new CERAMETALLIC woofers are supposed to deliver tighter bass, while the LTS titanium diaphragm tweeter promises clearer highs. In practice, this translates to a noticeable bigger horn effect when you crank up an action movie. I filmed a scene from a recent blockbuster and heard the on-screen explosions feel more like a physical presence rather than just a loud bang. The benefit is most apparent when you have a dedicated AV receiver that can drive each channel with the power it needs. If you're using a budget receiver with limited power, you might not see the full dynamic range the speakers are capable of, and the supposed bigger horn advantage could feel more like an overemphasis on the treble. One of the practical strengths that often gets lost in marketing copy is the dual input terminals. This isn't just an IC-to-have. It allows you to bi-wire or bi-amp each speaker. For the technically inclined, splitting the high-frequency and low-frequency signals can reduce distortion and let you fine-tune the crossover points. In my own rig, I ran bi-amp on the front left and right speakers using a separate amp for the bass drivers. The result was a cleaner, more controlled bass that didn't bleed into the mids. If you already own a separate power amplifier or plan to upgrade your AV receiver in the future, those terminals add real flexibility. On the flip side, if you're simply plugging the whole system into a single receiver unit, you won't be taking advantage of that capability, and you're essentially paying a premium for a feature you won't use. Now, let's talk about real-world usability. Setting up a 5.1.2 in a typical living room can be a bit of a puzzle. The floor-standing speakers are fairly tall, so you need enough floor space to keep them away from walls at least a couple of feet to avoid unwanted reflections. The upward-firing Atmos modules, the RP500SA2, require a clear ceiling space directly above the listening position. In a room with low ceiling fans or heavy acoustic tiles, the height channel loses its intended effect and may sound like regular surround sound instead of truly immersive audio. For people who have finished basements or attics with low ceilings, the Atmos modules become a compromise rather than an upgrade. If you're a home theater enthusiast who enjoys mixing and matching components, the Klipsch Ebony line offers a modular approach. The front speakers, RP8000F2 and RP404C2, are robust enough to handle both movie soundtracks and high-resolution music. During a recent listening test with a vinyl record, the mid-range remained warm, and the treble didn't reveal any harshness, which is a common complaint with many horn-loaded designs. However, I also found that the system can be a little bright on certain streaming content that's already overcompressed, meaning dialogue can sometimes cut through a tad too sharply. If you typically use the system for movies sourced from Blu-ray or lossless audio, you'll appreciate the detail. If most of your media is streamed at lower bit rates, you might notice the occasional sibilance and wish for a bit of tonal adjustment. One hidden trade-off is the power requirement of the subwoofer, the RP1600SW. It's a 12-inch unit that can push serious low frequencies, but it also draws a noticeable amount of electricity, especially when you raise the volume for deep impact scenes. In a house with a modest wiring setup, you might notice a faint hum or a slight dimming of other lights when the sub is at full blast. This isn't a defect, just a practical note for anyone sensitive to electrical noise. Pairing the sub with a quality power conditioner can mitigate the issue, but that adds another expense.